Okay, we're live. So welcome to the TADSummit Revisited. And this time we're going to be talking to Sebastian Schumann, who will be sharing his presentation on his experiences in working with TADHack and then taking the results from TADHack into his business. So I guess first question that we received was, what are the pros and cons of taking your approach that you described in your presentation at TADSummit, Sebastian, versus the more traditional product development approach for a telco?
Yeah, I would say the definitely the pros are the time to market that we have. So we don't need to go through long RFP processes, and we don't need to kind of imagine everything that we want prior to deploying it. But we can actually have an idea, take it, build it, and then iterate over it. I would say that's definitely an advantage. Another one is that we are very flexible and we actually understand what we build. So we don't, usually when you put out an RFP, you get something and it's a black box. If you want to get a change, you need to issue a change request because you may not even know all the capabilities, or you may not have thought about that. And here we are actually, once we build the system ourselves, so at least we understand the components, we are very able to very flexibly change things. And partially, of course, if we do in-house development, it's also cheaper. So we have either our own resources, we have local developers that are significantly cheaper than vendor making coding changes in there.
That's a good point.
I would say a con is similar to a pro. It's also time to market, because actually time to market is something that is much harder to achieve than if you would run through the normal process in terms of not maybe how you get access to the software, but how you deploy it. So the inside the operator to bring it basically live as a product. Because usually when you do the RFP process, when you do the vendors, when you do trials in your lab, when everyone is involved in a big telco project, of course, everyone knows quite ahead what to do and has a long time for it. So, 6 months to 1 year, everything can be prepared. But if all of a sudden you have a good idea and you think about it today, you have it next week, processes aren't ready for it. Not everyone that is involved plays along. They are still, have the traditional mindset, if you wish.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge for the service as well that I've built. So we were pretty quickly done with the part where the partners were involved. But once we wanted to get it out there, to even get a virtual machine, to get it deployed inside the lab, to get the network configured, it took longer than all the rest combined. And we're actually still not fully done, to be honest. So that's I would say that's it's good that we are ready faster, but still we are not at a point where we can say we come to a final product that quickly.
No, that's a good point.
Sure,
in terms of how you work within the existing organization. Because that
exactly.
remains the problem in most projects. You're trying to do something differently, but there's still this mass of sort of organizational delay. You mentioned a good point on the virtual machines. Just getting a machine provisioned so you can get the software running. Did you think about just taking it outside of the organization completely to get it up and running faster?
We actually, so when we did when we tried things, we actually did that. So I took my credit card, went on DigitalOcean, and simply, as many do, provisioned a virtual machine. But for some of the interfaces that we have, and luckily we have them, are CRM systems and other, I would say, more mission critical systems, and we also use internal APIs. So what I've built with Nexmo was actually running on a virtual machine, and since their API is also public, I could easily use that for showcasing it. But for the actual deployment, using an internal API and IT systems, we needed to deploy it inside our environment. We are able to use the RESTCOM box as a public cloud. So we are better using the software as a service kind of deployment from Telestacks. That was already a benefit to be up faster with that part, but the entire solution is still not possible because the interfaces are simply not exposed.
Exactly. You've got private APIs. It's behind the firewall. so it still has to be built
Yeah.
behind.
But for prototyping, it was useful. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I actually could do it that quickly, because
Yeah.
everything was basically under my control
Cool.
until we deployed it.
Excellent. Okay, no, that's clear. That's clear. So moving on to the next question. This came from several of the telcos that were asking. You claim to be a non-coder, but the tools you used look quite complex. So I guess they're looking for some confirmation about how easy is it really?
I think it's. I mean, for me, it was, I would say, easier than I thought. Of course, I had a bit of experience. So in the past, I've worked with open source SIP platforms.
Okay.
Deploying them, not programming them, but deploying them. So I'm comfortable
on the DevOps piece.
Yeah, exactly. On the Linux shell. I've also written a small API in the website. So I mean, programming websites, doing simple things, Node.js, kind of, 5 commands, input, output, a bit of a calculation in between I could do. And that was fine. But I think this is basically what any kid could do. But when we move over, or any, not a programmer, but like, as you say, DevOps, or people that can build websites.
Anybody who works on a website, who has basic knowledge of how to set up a website, stuff like that. So it's addressing the broader web manager, web programmer market, which of course is tens of millions of people versus say a hardcore C++ programmer.
Exactly. So I've managed that, but then the hard part was actually to interface and integrate with real telephony. So even they're working as an operator, hooking an application onto a phone number is not trivial at all. We have phone numbers, but for me to get access to it is not that easy. And we didn't have an SMS API back then that was as easily interfaceable. So I would need to use SMPP and stuff. So that was very easy. Nexmo works with APIs, so you have simple REST calls. You get the SMS content, and then for the call, we hooked up a phone number to the telestack system. And there again, it's just a drag and drop of the actions that you want. So you need to know the flow that you have. The logic itself should be clear of the service. And whenever you need the API to check something on the back end, it's a simple API call, one URL you call, and then you act on it. So I think for me the biggest surprise was actually it's not rocket science to work with telephony and we don't need an IMS. We don't need expensive application server to do all that. We need to be able to route phone numbers. We need to be able to kind of design the flow through the application, and that's basically it.
Exactly.
And it was it's again available for everyone. So it's RESTCOM is open source. So I did install it myself. Again, just Linux knowledge you needed. Nexmo is an API with documentation. So it was fairly easy. Easy.
And then the nice thing with the setting up the RESTCOM instance is it's a recipe. You just follow the recipe sheet on how to set it up on Amazon Web Services. And every time somebody else tries it, they always hit hiccups because even though there's a recipe sheet, there's always dumb stuff you do. Even though it says write this down or enter this command with this operand or whatever. You enter the command, but you forget the operand. There's always dumb stuff you do. It's half of it is not just the recipe, but all the catches to make sure that people, where people make the mistakes.
Exactly. But this was actually good on the TADHack because sitting with the guys from Telestacks and with some developers from them, it was kind of, if you had a question how to tweak something that you wouldn't need to tweak otherwise, or that you actually missed, as you said, you get immediate feedback. And, and that's what I like. And one thing I thought about was actually if we would have had access to our own STP, if we could build it, and of course we could, our existing STP. But again, to get access to it is rather hard. We barely use the service creation environment because usually third-party integrators are doing that. So there's very little, I would say, homemade service logic that we're using. So again, it's a kind of trade-off. Of course, we have another application server, but the flexibility it brings us, and trying it out ourselves, seeing it works, and then just integrating it as a service. I mean, it couldn't be easier, I would say.
Exactly, and it gives you the control, the flexibility. When things go wrong, you know why they go wrong. When you want to extend something, you have a far better feel for how easy or difficult it is, rather than going through that process of through a sales guy into the product team, through the system integration team, and out pops a change request for generally $1 million+ when it could just have taken you a couple of days and a couple of lines of code.
Yeah,
That's a good
exactly.
point. That's a good point. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was, of course, RESTCOM Visual Designer, and that, I mean, it is just a drag and drop environment. So, just interested in, what were your experiences? Where were its strengths and where were its limitations?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I have not used it prior to the project. So actually, this hack and using RESTCOM was my first experience. But I think so for me the hardest part was actually the installation.
Yeah.
So getting installing RESTCOM itself,
Yes.
because actually I missed that there was an install script. So I tried to do everything by hand, and then at the hackathon they showed me actually I just have to run 2 commands. So that was kind of fun. But so after it was working, it was actually quite easy. So of course you need some, if you get it working and you get access, usually, at least for me, that's the case. I don't read the manual. So of course, sometimes you expect certain things that work a bit differently.
Yeah.
And especially how the API calls are made, how you attach parameters. That was something I had to read in a bit. But afterwards, it was rather easy. And I would say the API abstraction, so the things you could do once you knew how it works, was actually much simpler than thought. So you could really you could build anything. You could build whitelisting services, something like that. Simply before you deliver the call, make a request. Is this person on my whitelist? Send back, true or false. And then you go through the flow, and that was quite fine. And we had one smaller issue when we did the real installation with the language, because in my hack I used kind of text to speech, or text to speech. For Slovak there was no text to speech, but we solved that by simply uploading the WAV files. So and that actually was nice, because now the service sounds like every service from us. So we got the WAV files from the company that does this. I could upload it, and it's not distinguishable, between any expensive service towards that one that we built with significantly less resources, let's say.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Excellent. And one of the things with RESTCOM is it's open source. Now, traditionally, telcos have been quite concerned about using open source software. Now, I'm just interested, given your experiences and your, your views, do you think those concerns are still valid today?
I would say not really. It depends a bit. So I have to say, in Slovak Telecom, we were the first project I did in 2008 was actually replacing a commercial platform with an open source platform. So we had a few customers on a commercially expensive system, and we moved them to an OpenSIPs based system, and we are since then very, very satisfied. The costs are marginal that we have, the running costs. The operations feedback is that it's one of the most stable systems. But back then it was a fight, I would say, to get it there, even though the numbers spoke for it, but people were afraid. What I think is what they were afraid was not necessarily that it's not stable enough, but it's mostly responsibility. Because if you have a vendor, a product with a clear vendor stamp, it's very easy to whom to blame in case something doesn't work. And to understand that when we have an open source platform, there is still somebody responsible, there is still an integrator, and actually, outlining the benefits that you can have different integrators if you're not happy with the one you're having just now.
Exactly.
Is, I would say, one of the benefits that that we see. So I think it shifted a bit. And what I've heard from another colleague in a project the other day was that actually, before it was right, people, you had to convince them, and now actually I've heard already that some of our other members in the group already requiring it, actually. So they require that whatever they get is open source, in order to own the source code, not to have to be able to modify it yourself, but also to simply be on the safe side and not be locked in.
No, that's a good point.
I think that was a shift. I've also seen that when we were on the TED events, that people are, I would say, generally open, more open towards that, or the questions are a bit different, but still responsibility is one of the things I would say is a bigger problem.
No, I agree. And one of the other things with open source projects is there's also a community behind it as well. And that, I think, is very powerful, especially when there's always some hiccup you hit in any project, especially when you're taking, the product and you're customizing it, or you're doing new things. And being able to have that community just there that you can just ping a question into, and especially if it's active, get those responses in minutes,
Yeah,
really does help get answers. That just remove it from even being a problem. Rather than, oh, we got to have a meeting about this, and then we got to deal with the change request, or we got to get the support issue handled. It then all goes away to basically just somebody popping in, asking a question, getting the response back, and then solving the problem.
exactly. Yeah, that's another advantage. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. I've seen it increasingly, even in telcos here in the US, where when you're making a purchase request for software, you have to justify why you're using closed source rather than open source. So definitely, I think the tide has
That's a good
changed.
trend, I would say. That's a good trend, and it will help. Yeah, it's not even that it's like against the legacy operators, because even there you see them open sourcing more and more, actually contributing partially.
Exactly.
I think it's a healthy trend for the whole ecosystem.
I agree, absolutely. So moving on from the open source discussion to the NetNexmo API. So what were your experiences there? And we had an email come in asking, so I've included it in there. It doesn't conform to the one API specification. So I've included it in there.
Yeah.
Somebody asks, so I've included it.
Yeah.
Does that matter?
Yeah, I think, to answer that, I think it doesn't matter, but I'll tell you why. Generally, I would say the experiences were very good. As I said before, we are an operator, so obviously we do a lot of SMS.
Yeah.
But at the point of the hack, I had no access to the easy version of our API. We just had an SMPP connection.
Yeah.
And that was rather hard to integrate with. Yeah. And Nexmo was, as I said, you put your credit card details down, or I don't even know if you have to. I think you just upload like some euro. You get an API. You get your username, password, and you can actually send SMS. And that was very, very flexible.
Yeah.
It was very simple, I would say, even compared to some of the other companies out there that do similar things.
Yeah.
So I found the hurdle kind of smaller. Probably Nexmo is a bit smaller as well than some of the others, but it was very easy to get used. Another advantage for us was that we had actually Slovak numbers there. So it was, I would say, the only operator that had Slovak inbound numbers for telephony and for SMS.
Yep.
Some of them have local numbers, like non-mobile for voice.
Yep.
But SMS termination was a Nexmo, I would say, unique selling point for us.
Gotcha.
So that's why we chose them as well. And as I said, it was very easy. And regarding the one API, so for me, it would have meant more efforts to actually use the one API, because I've personally never used it. And the Nexmo API is so easy.
Exactly.
And as with everything, I think it's kind of, if things are that easy as, you get a library or you integrate directly with a REST API, you don't need standards for that. You just take what works.
Yeah.
And there is no adaptation either. If two HTTP calls are done that easily, that all the other efforts that one API tried to do, or there is no need for standards for the standard's sake. Basically, it's just software. It's 2 lines of not even code that you have to add. It's just a library that you download. You put your username, password, and you make SMS send, and that's basically it. So I didn't miss it. And
it was the actual sort of. I remember Tony, the CEO of Nexo, saying, "Well, I wrote the API definition because it's so simple, and he's not a coder."
Exactly.
It's just created what he thought was a very simple, straightforward definition.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, it's to the point now where you just use what works and what works reliably and meets your requirements. As you said, being able to do the mobile termination was very important capability. So that's great. So moving on, because we're coming up already on 20 minutes here. In your slides, you talked about the TAD spirit. So just interested to know what you meant by that.
Yeah. Well, what I meant is generally a nice and open atmosphere, and to meet partners that somehow understand that the world has changed. So I mean, I would say a bit more optimistic and a bit naive sometimes with regard to ideas and trying to change the telco. Although I know that some things that maybe cannot be changed easily, but it's good that you don't have people there that laugh at you, but actually that think why not, and actually can help you make that happen.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of the things what I consider, I would say, very relevant regarding the other operators I met, that you're kind of open, you kind of talk, it's not that you know like disclose things that you shouldn't disclose, but it's just that it's not like on a high level, but it's just that you share your experiences, you share what worked, you share what didn't work. And if you did something cool and it worked, it might help the others. You just tell them, and that's I think an environment that I would consider TAD spirit. So it's like not too much. A good mix between promotion on one hand of whatever you do and with whatever partner you do it, but no no bullshit basically.
Exactly.
So straightforward solutions and sharing. Sharing the best recipe to innovate.
No, and that's a good point, because that's one of the things especially with TADHack we focus on. It's developers, and when we say developers, it's of all types, not just coders, non-coders, a focus on technology, and that focus on creativity, just doing new stuff, that freedom, just experiment and learn. So that's a good point. One of the challenges that we still have with particularly TADHack, less so with TADSummit, is getting more telcos involved. To realize what you have through your experiences. Now we are expanding. So, for example, for TADHack London coming up in April, we've got Stephen Sale, who's an analyst who has signed up and wants to have a go at hacking. Cool. Not a coder. He's going to go in there and he's going to learn some of the tools, and he's just going to give it a go. He's got some ideas. So you are trailblazing, so we've got people following behind. And an analyst will get, of course, far broader coverage when he writes about his experiences. But I'm just interested, any help or what guidance you can give, and how can we get more telcos involved in TADHack?
I think what it's good in, or what we should do is whenever there is somebody who has an interest, to make it very easy for him to attend. So I think one of the things is the remote participation, because not everyone is traveling on their own budget to the events, or actually gets approval to do that. That's, I would say, one of the things. Another thing is to kind of package hacks or package like tools. So once they have an idea, or once they want to do something, they can actually get started like themselves. So if they are not a coder, I think that the hardest part is to actually get to people that don't know about us. But because this is like, I don't really know how to solve that. But once you have somebody who heard about it, or who has a good idea, the availability of the tool set is something that I think is very important. So some people, go to all the websites, sign up, read into all the tools and so on. But maybe if you have a certain, maybe we can kind of make not a flow, but kind of a, if you have a problem, if you want to do something, what are the partners, where are the APIs, how are they usable, and then
gotcha. That's a good point, that packaging, because if we look at what Dialog's done with IdeaMart, there's IdeaMart Pro, which is APIs, which you were using, but they also have IdeaMart, which is just scripts and web pages to make it so easy that non-coders can use it. So part of it, I guess you're right, it's packaging it up to make it so easy that even from the comfort of your own desk or home, you can start playing around with these tools and creating those types of services.
Exactly, and right away, not have to sign up, because again, that's not everyone has grown up in this internet world where you just put a PayPal there and that's it. So I think that's kind of that could help in getting those that had the first step of getting the awareness to actually get them involved.
No, that's a good point, because it's one of those that at the moment we rely on just getting people in to the event and then talking with the people who've written the platforms to realize how easy it is. But making that barrier as low as possible and making it more a barrier a hurdle you can cover online remotely, I think that's a good piece of advice. So cool. I mean, that's great, Sebastian. Again, thanks so much for attending TADHack last year, and for a great hack and winning, and then for presenting the results at TADSummit. Is there anything else you want to add? Or
I think that's that's all from me. I'm going to be in April, as it looks now, also in London. So
excellent.
Looking forward to continuing hacking.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sebastian. And we'll finish there.